I never thought I'd admit it, not even to myself. For years, the thoughts lingered in the back of my mind, fleeting at first, then growing into something I could no longer ignore. It wasn't jealousy or insecurity that gripped me when I saw my wife, Dasha, being admired by other men. It was something else entirely. A thrill, a twisted sense of pride, and something deeper that I couldn't yet name. Dasha, with her radiant smile and magnetic charm, had always been the center of attention wherever we went. Her presence lit up a room, effortlessly drawing people to her. I'd seen how my friends, Max, Ivan, and Anatoly, looked at her when we were all together. Max, with his quick wit and easy charm, would find any excuse to talk to her. Ivan and Anatoly, rugged Romanian builders with hands rough from hard work, couldn't hide the way their eyes lingered on her. They all wanted her. And somewhere in the depths of my mind, I wanted them to have her too. It wasn't something I could confess easily. Who could understand such a desire? Most men would be enraged by the thought of their wife in another man's arms, but for me, it was different. The idea of Dasha exploring her freedom, letting herself be taken by my friends, filled me with a strange, intoxicating excitement. I wanted to see her as they saw her, untouchable yet tantalizing, desired yet free to choose. The first time I brought it up, I didn't know how she'd react. It was late, and we were lying in bed after a night out with friends. She looked so beautiful, her hair tousled and her cheeks flushed from the wine. "Dasha," I began hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask you something unusual?" She turned to me, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Unusual?" "Coming from you, Joe, that's not surprising," she teased, a playful grin spreading across her face. I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. What if you were with someone else? Not just anyone, but one of my friends. Max, Ivan, Anatoly, someone we trust. Her expression shifted, her grin fading into something softer, more thoughtful. She didn't speak right away, and I felt my heart race as I waited for her reaction. "You're serious?" she asked finally, her tone calm but tinged with curiosity. I nodded, unable to look away from her. "It's something I've thought about. I don't know why, but the idea of it, of seeing you with someone else, it excites me. But only if you want it to." To my surprise, she didn't laugh or dismiss the idea. Instead, she studied me, her fingers tracing lazy circles on the bedsheet. "That's unexpected," she said slowly. "But it's also kind of intriguing. You're okay with this? I mean, really okay?" Her openness gave me courage. "More than okay. I'd love it, Dasha. I'd love to see you happy, free, desired." She leaned back, her lips curving into a sly smile. "Well, Joe, you've certainly given me something to think about." That night, I lay awake long after she fell asleep, my mind racing with possibilities. The thought of Dasha with Max, her laughter echoing in his car as he drove her around, or with Ivan and Anatoly, their strong hands guiding her, each scenario played out in vivid detail in my imagination. For the first time, I felt like I had tapped into a part of myself I never knew existed. Over the following weeks, Dasha and I talked about it more openly. She admitted that the idea intrigued her too, though she had her reservations. "I trust you, Joe," she said one evening as we sat together on the couch. "But this is unconventional, to say the least. Are you sure this is what you want?" I nodded, my heart pounding. I've never been more sure of anything. And so, we began to plan. Dasha, with her natural charm and confidence, would take the lead. She would decide when and with whom, while I stayed in the background, a silent observer to her adventures. We agreed on boundaries, communication was key, and she would share everything with me afterward. It wasn't just about the act, it was about the trust, the connection, and the thrill of exploring something new together. The first step was Max. He was the easiest choice, charming, approachable, and already comfortable around Dasha. The thought of her laughing in the passenger seat of his car, their hands brushing as he shifted gears, sent a shiver down my spine. As the day drew closer, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Could I really handle this? Would it be everything I imagined, or would it tear us apart? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I trusted Dasha, and I was ready to take this journey with her. The day finally arrived. Dasha and I had gone over every detail the night before, talking through boundaries and expectations. She'd reassured me with her soft, calming voice, telling me she'd take it one step at a time. As we sipped our morning coffee, the reality of what was about to happen hit me like a wave, leaving me both anxious and exhilarated. Max was the perfect first choice. As a driver, he had this relaxed, easygoing demeanor that made everyone feel comfortable. He was always cracking jokes, always attentive, and always subtly flirting with Dasha. I'd seen the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought I wasn't looking. It didn't bother me, it thrilled me. And now, knowing he was about to have her, I couldn't contain my excitement. Dasha spent the afternoon getting ready. I watched her carefully apply her makeup, her hands steady as she lined her eyes and painted her lips a bold red. She chose a black dress that hugged her curves perfectly, stopping just above the knee, with a neckline that showed just enough to tease but not enough to give everything away. My heart raced as I took in the sight of her. "You look incredible," I said, unable to hide the awe in my voice. She turned to me with a playful smile. "I have to, don't I? After all, it's Max. He's used to being around pretty women." I laughed nervously, but her confidence put me at ease. This was Dasha's strength: she could step into any room and own it, commanding attention without even trying. By early evening, Max arrived to pick her up. He texted her when he was outside, and she grabbed her small black purse, giving me one last look before heading to the door. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Go have fun. I'll be here when you get back." She smiled and leaned in to kiss me, her lips warm and soft against mine. Then, with a swish of her dress, she was gone, leaving behind a trail of her perfume and a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. I spent the evening pacing the living room, unable to sit still. My mind was a flurry of images: Dasha laughing at Max's jokes, her hand brushing against his arm as they talked, the way he might look at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. My chest tightened, but it wasn't jealousy, it was anticipation. She texted me once, a simple message: "Everything's fine. I'll tell you everything later." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. I wanted to ask her what was happening, to get every detail right then and there, but I forced myself to wait. This was part of the plan, part of the thrill. When she finally returned home, it was nearly midnight. I heard her keys in the door and rushed to meet her, my nerves on edge. She stepped inside, her cheeks flushed, her lips slightly smudged, and her eyes sparkling with energy. "How was it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, slipping off her heels and setting them by the door. "Why don't we sit down, and I'll tell you everything?" We settled on the couch, and she took a sip of the wine I'd poured for her. The room felt charged, every detail magnified: the way her dress clung to her, the faint scent of Max's cologne lingering on her skin. She began to speak, her voice calm but tinged with excitement. "He was a gentleman, as always," she started, curling her legs beneath her. "We went for a drive first. He asked me how you were, and I told him you were fine, that we were fine. I didn't give him too many details about, this arrangement. I figured it was better to keep it simple." I nodded, hanging on her every word. We stopped at this quiet little cafe, and he insisted on paying. He was charming, of course, making me laugh the entire time. He couldn't take his eyes off me, Joe. It was intoxicating. Her words sent a shiver through me. I could picture it so clearly: Max leaning across the table, his eyes locked on hers, his voice low and teasing. "Afterward, we drove around for a while," she continued. "He showed me this little spot by the river. It was beautiful, the moon reflecting on the water. We got out of the car and just talked. At first, it was innocent, but then he started to get closer. He told me I looked stunning tonight, that he couldn't believe you'd let me out of the house looking like that." She laughed softly, a sound that sent a jolt of electricity through me. "And then?" I prompted, my voice tight with anticipation. "And then he kissed me," she said, her eyes meeting mine. It was gentle at first, like he was testing the waters. But then it got more intense. I let him, Joe. I let him kiss me, touch me. I didn't stop him. My breath caught, and I felt a strange mix of emotions washing over me: pride, arousal, and an almost unbearable curiosity. I didn't let it go too far, she added quickly. Not yet. I wanted to make sure you were okay with this before taking things further. I'm okay, I said immediately, my voice trembling with sincerity. I'm more than okay. She smiled, reaching out to take my hand. I wasn't sure how I feel about this, but it felt good, Joe. It felt freeing. And knowing you were okay with it made it even better. I pulled her close, my heart pounding as her words sank in. This was just the beginning, the first step into a world we were both eager to explore. Max had opened the door, and I couldn't wait to see what lay beyond it. After Dasha's night with Ivan, something had shifted between us. It was as though each encounter brought us closer, peeling back layers of trust and vulnerability we hadn't even realized existed. Every shared glance, every whispered detail of her experiences, left me feeling more connected to her. But there was still one more person I wanted to include in our journey: Anatoly. Anatoly was unlike Max or Ivan. He was bold, full of energy, and carried himself with an air of playful confidence that made him impossible to ignore. His Romanian accent only added to his charm, and he had a natural charisma that drew people in. I often joked that he could talk his way out of any situation or into one. Dasha had always found him amusing, and I caught her laughing at his antics more times than I could count. One evening, as we relaxed on the couch, I brought him up. What about Anatoly? I asked, my voice steady. Dasha raised an eyebrow, a smile already forming on her lips. Anatoly? That's an interesting choice. He's a little wild, don't you think? I chuckled. That's part of the appeal, isn't it? He's different. And I know he's interested in you. He doesn't exactly hide it. She laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. He's not subtle, that's for sure. But are you sure about this, Joe? He's a lot. I'm sure, I said firmly. If you are. She leaned in, kissing me softly. All right. Let's see what happens. The opportunity presented itself a week later when Anatoly invited us to a housewarming party at his new apartment. It was a modest but cozy space, filled with the smell of grilled meat and the sound of lively conversation. Dasha looked stunning, as always, in a fitted red dress that left little to the imagination. I could see Anatoly's eyes light up the moment we walked in, his grin widening as he greeted her with a hug that lingered just a little too long. The party was in full swing, but my attention never strayed far from Dasha and Anatoly. He was his usual animated self, regaling her with stories about his work and his travels, his hands moving expressively as he spoke. Dasha laughed at his jokes, her body language open and relaxed. They looked so natural together, their chemistry undeniable. At one point, I excused myself to grab a drink, leaving them alone on the balcony. Through the glass door, I watched as Anatoly leaned closer to her, his hand resting casually on the railing beside her. She turned toward him, her expression playful yet composed. My heart raced as I imagined their conversation, every subtle gesture fueling my anticipation. As the night wore on, the party began to wind down. Guests trickled out one by one, leaving only a handful of us behind. Dasha and I exchanged a glance, silently agreeing that it was time to take the next step. She approached Anatoly, her voice light and teasing. So, Anatoly, she said, tilting her head, you've been such a gracious host. How about showing me the rest of the apartment? He grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I'd be happy to. Come on, let me show you. I stayed behind, watching as they disappeared down the hallway. My chest tightened, but it wasn't fear or jealousy, it was anticipation. I trusted Dasha completely, and I knew she would handle the situation with the grace and confidence that always amazed me. Minutes turned into an hour, and I remained in the living room, my mind racing with images of what might be happening behind closed doors. I imagined Anatoly's boldness meeting Dasha's playful charm, the way his hands might move over her, the way she might respond. The thought filled me with a strange, exhilarating mix of emotions. Finally, I heard footsteps approaching. Dasha appeared first, her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly tousled. She gave me a knowing smile, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Anatoly followed close behind, his grin wide and his posture relaxed. "Well," Dasha said, her voice light and casual, "I think Anatoly's apartment gets my seal of approval." He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "You're a lucky man, Joe. Dasha is something special." I smiled, my chest swelling with pride. "I know she is." As Anatoly walked us to the door, I couldn't help but notice the way he looked at Dasha, a mixture of admiration and satisfaction in his gaze. It was clear he'd enjoyed himself, and the thought only added to my own excitement. When we got home, Dasha and I sat together on the couch, a comfortable silence settling between us. Finally, I broke the silence. "How was it?" I asked, my voice soft. She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Anatoly is intense," she said with a laugh. "He's confident, that's for sure. But he was also surprisingly sweet. He made me feel powerful." "Did you enjoy it?" I pressed, needing to hear her say it. She nodded, her smile warm. "I did. But what I enjoy most is coming back to you, sharing this with you. It's not just about the moment, Joe, it's about us." Her words filled me with a sense of fulfillment I couldn't put into words. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore, it was our reality, and it was bringing us closer than ever before. As I held her that night, my mind raced with possibilities. We'd come so far, and yet it felt like this was only the beginning. There was still so much to explore, so many more ways to grow together. And I couldn't wait to see what the future held. The days following Dasha's encounter with Anatoly were filled with quiet moments of reflection. Each night, as we lay side by side, I found myself thinking back on how far we'd come. What had started as a wild fantasy had become a shared reality, one that brought us closer with every step. Dasha, as always, had a way of reading my thoughts. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, the soft glow of the setting sun bathing her face, she turned to me with a knowing smile. "What's on your mind, Joe?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. I hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "I've just been thinking about all of this. How we've grown. How much I've come to admire you, not just as my wife, but as someone so fearless, so confident." Her cheeks flushed slightly, and she reached for my hand. "You've always seen me that way, Joe. That's what gave me the courage to explore this with you. You trusted me when most people wouldn't even dare to dream of something like this." Her words warmed me, and I squeezed her hand gently. "It's true. I trust you completely, Dasha. And I've realized that this isn't just about the excitement or the thrill. It's about watching you live freely, seeing you embrace every part of yourself." She leaned closer, her lips brushing against mine. "And it's about us," she whispered. "About being open and honest with each other in ways most people can't imagine." That night, as we lay in bed, I asked her something that had been on my mind for a while. "Do you ever feel different about us? After being with Max, Ivan, and Anatoly?" She propped herself up on one elbow, her eyes searching mine. "Different? Maybe. But not in the way you're thinking. If anything, I feel closer to you, Joe. Sharing this with you has made me see just how deep our connection goes. It's not just about trust, it's about love, respect, and understanding." Her words struck a chord deep within me. She was right. This journey hadn't weakened our bond, it had strengthened it in ways I never thought possible. The following weekend, we found ourselves back at home, the quiet hum of the neighborhood offering a sense of calm after the whirlwind of the past few weeks. Dasha suggested we take the evening to ourselves, no plans, no guests, just us. We spent the evening reminiscing, talking about everything we'd experienced. She recounted each encounter in vivid detail, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and tenderness. As she spoke, I felt a wave of emotions washing over me, pride, joy, and a deep sense of fulfillment. "Do you have a favorite moment?" I asked her, curious about her perspective. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Every moment was special in its own way. Max was charming, Ivan was thoughtful, and Anatoly, well, he was an experience all his own. But the best part of it all was knowing you were with me, even if you weren't in the room. That connection, that understanding, it made everything feel right. Her words filled me with a sense of peace. This wasn't just a series of encounters, it was a journey we had taken together, one that had brought us closer with every step. As the evening wore on, we found ourselves wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside fading away. I realized then that this wasn't the end of our journey, it was just another chapter in the story we were writing together. Dasha, I said softly, do you ever wonder what's next for us? Where we go from here? She tilted her head, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. I think that's the beauty of it, Joe. We don't have to know. We can just explore together. Her words resonated deeply, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. This wasn't about reaching a destination, it was about the journey, about growing together and embracing every part of ourselves. That night, as we fell asleep in each other's arms, I knew one thing for certain: whatever the future held, we would face it together, with open hearts and unwavering trust. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting on the journey we had embarked upon. Each encounter had been a step toward something greater, a new understanding of love and trust that bound Dasha and me closer than ever before. What had started as a fantasy had become an extraordinary reality, and now, I felt a sense of calm, a deep satisfaction that words could barely capture. Dasha seemed to sense this too. She carried herself with an even greater confidence than before, her every movement exuding a quiet power. It wasn't just about the experiences she'd had with Max, Ivan, and Anatoly, it was about the way she'd embraced her desires, the way we had explored this together and come out stronger on the other side. One evening, as we shared a quiet dinner, Dasha broke the silence. Joe, she said, her voice soft but steady, do you feel like this has changed us? I looked up from my plate, meeting her gaze. Yes, I admitted. But not in the way I thought it might. It's made me see you in a whole new light, Dasha. You're brave, confident, and so much more than I ever realized. And it's made me love you even more. She smiled, reaching across the table to take my hand. I feel the same way. This wasn't just about the thrill, Joe. It was about us. About exploring who we are and what we mean to each other. Her words filled me with a sense of warmth, and I squeezed her hand gently. So, where do we go from here? Dasha leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. I think we've opened a door, Joe. And now it's up to us to decide what lies beyond it. There's so much more we can explore together. The following weekend, we decided to take some time for ourselves. We drove out to the countryside, the rolling hills and open skies providing the perfect backdrop for reflection and connection. As we walked hand in hand through the fields, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. This is what it's all about, I said, breaking the comfortable silence. Dasha glanced at me, her smile soft. What do you mean? Us, I said simply. This journey we've been on, it's not just about what we've done. It's about what we've learned, about how we've grown. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. She stopped walking, turning to face me. Neither would I, Joe. You've given me something most people never experience, the freedom to be myself completely, without fear or judgment. And I'll always be grateful for that. Her words brought a lump to my throat, and I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as the wind whispered through the grass around us. In that moment, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Back at home, as we settled into our familiar routine, I found myself thinking about the future. The experiences we'd shared had shown me just how much was possible when trust and love formed the foundation of a relationship. And while I didn't know exactly what the next chapter would hold, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I turned to Dasha. Do you ever wonder what people would think if they knew about us? About everything we've done? She laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. Oh, they'd probably think we're crazy. But who cares? This is our life, Joe. It's not about what anyone else thinks, it's about us. Her words were a reminder of everything we'd built together, a life defined not by convention but by our own rules. And as I looked at her, radiant and confident, I realized that this was the life I'd always wanted, a life filled with love, trust, and the freedom to explore. As I write this now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I can't help but feel a sense of pride. Dasha and I have created something rare and beautiful, a bond that grows stronger with every passing day. The journey hasn't always been easy, but it's been worth every step. What lies ahead? I don't know, and that's the beauty of it. Dasha and I will continue to explore, to grow, and to face whatever challenges come our way. And no matter where the road takes us, I know we'll walk it together, hand in hand, ready for whatever comes next. This is our story, and it's only just beginning.